Welcome to Tax Tip Tuesday. I am your host, Chastity Grady. I am the owner of Grady Tax Plus, where I help service-based providers who are new in their business understand their business structure, their taxes, and keep their finances organized so we can feel confident knowing that they are saving both time and money. Okay, so today's live is going to be about business tax returns, okay? Who should file them and the different types. So if you're just tuning into this live, definitely give me a like this live, and definitely share this live out. Share this live out with someone who needs to know what business tax returns are, okay, and whether or not they should file them, all right? And what brought on this topic is because I run into several business owners who think that they shouldn't file their business tax returns, or who say that they've only filed their personal tax returns, but they haven't filed their business tax returns. And so when I hear things like that, my like spidey senses go off, because it's like, okay, you said you filed your personal tax returns, but you didn't file your business tax returns, and you really can't do one without the other. From an actual technical standpoint, you really can't. And so I want to clear that up today in regards to who should file business tax returns and the type, okay? So I want to throw out some myths out there, because there are several myths about business owners when it comes to tax returns. And so one of the myths is that, like for example, I heard today, so I met with a client today who mentioned that they didn't, they mentioned that they did not file their business tax returns in 2020 because they didn't have their EIN number, or they didn't have their LLC, okay? And that is a myth, okay? It's a myth that you have to have an LLC or EIN number in order to file your business tax returns. The IRS does not care if you set up an LLC or if you even obtain an EIN number from them. They don't care. If you generate income and expenses, then you are indeed a business, and therefore you do have to file a business tax return. And so, and another myth I hear is that, well, I didn't keep my business finances organized, so that's another reason why I didn't file it. Well, that's a myth. Just because you don't have your business income and expenses organized or anything, that's still not a reason to file. That's actually, something that you're at fault for, because you are required to have proof of your income and expenses if it were ever to come into judgment, okay, or into question. So I wanted to just throw that out there. So again, so if you are someone who you're advertising that you're in business, you're generating income, and when you generate income when you're in business, subsequently you normally have expenses, whether they're big or small, then you are in fact considered a business owner, okay? If you are a sole proprietor, if you are an independent contractor in a single member LLC, you will file the same tax form, okay? So a lot of people think that, just because I'm a sole proprietor or just because I'm an independent contractor, that I'm not considered a business, but in fact you are, because that is business income, okay? So if you are an independent contractor, sole proprietor, you are required to report that income, okay, and expenses, all right? Now, if you're someone who's just making money for fun and you have no intentions of doing anything further with it, then you could possibly be considered a hobbyist. But even when you're a hobbyist, you still have to report the income. So there's no way of really getting around it, okay? So if you are in business and you're generating income and expenses, you file a tax return. If you're a hobbyist and you're generating income from the hobby that you have, then guess what? You still have to file that on your taxes, just a different tax form, okay? So let's talk about the tax forms. In regards to tax forms, as I previously mentioned, sole proprietors, independent contractors, and single member LLCs, and a single member LLC is basically just you as the owner. You're the only one in with the LLC. Then you will file the same tax form, which is the Schedule C or Schedule E, depending on what type of business you have, but the most common is a Schedule C, okay? That Schedule C gets attached with your personal tax return. So that's one of the reasons why I said you can't file your personal tax return without filing the business portion, okay? They all go onto the same tax return once you send it out to the IRS, okay? So Schedule C. That is where you report your income and expenses. And if you are a inventory-based business, that's where you also report that information on, okay? So there's no, like I said, there's no getting around it, okay? If you're generating income, you're generating expenses, then you are required to file that tax return. And if you are just generating income as a hobbyist, then guess what? You still report that income, all right? So another thing is that when it comes to, for example, like the person I met with today, they said that they didn't file they haven't filed their business tax returns yet, but they filed their personal, okay? So regardless to your tax structure or your business structure, you're going to have the business attached to it, okay? So let's say this client wasn't, but let's say this client had an S corporation. In order to report what you need to report on a personal tax return, you would have to have filed the business tax return first, okay? Because whatever gets reported on the business tax return, you will get a schedule to report that on the personal, okay? So even then, there's still no way of filing your personal tax return thinking, oh, later on I will go back and file the business. That's actually the opposite. You actually file that business one first if you do have that type of tax structure. But if you don't, then like I mentioned, you would use the Schedule C or Schedule E, depending on your the type of business, and you will file it with your personal tax return, okay? So just to recap, if you're a sole proprietor, independent contractor, single member LLC, you will report that with your personal tax return. You report it on a Schedule C mostly. If you have different types of businesses that requires its own schedule, then you report that income and expenses separately. So if you have more than one business and they're all they can be a mixture between independent contractor for this type of business, single member LLC for this type of business, or whatever it is, you will just have different schedules for that business to allocate the appropriate income and expenses for that particular field, okay? But again, you there's no, I'll file my personal and go back and file my business. No, if you do it that way, then you will be making an amendment to your tax return. You would have to make an amendment to your tax return in order to add those schedules on there. And then if you have a different type of tax structure, so if you have, let's say, a single member LLC taxed as S corporation, you definitely would have to file that business tax return first, the 1120S. You would have to file that first, okay? Because you can't file the personal without knowing what you need to include on there, okay? So either way, you don't get away from filing your personal tax return without including your business on there in some kind of way, whether it's through a Schedule K1 or if it's through reporting on Schedule C's. Okay, so if y'all have questions about that, I see it's great information. If y'all have questions in particular, definitely leave it in the comments, because like this was a pretty quick, straightforward live. So I hope it made sense to y'all. I'm trying to make sure I didn't leave nothing off of my notes, but for the most part, if you're an independent contractor, or if you have a business in general and you feel like, oh, I'm not supposed to file it because I don't have my EIN yet, or if I don't have an LLC yet, that's false information. Regardless to whether you have an LLC or not, or EIN number or not, you still have to report the income and expenses. The IRS doesn't care that you don't have your stuff set up correctly. If you are generating income and expenses, you are officially a business, regardless to if it's set up correctly or not. So you are officially a business, and that information needs to go on the tax return, okay? And then you don't file your personal tax return without the business included. It goes on your business tax return. If you have a different type of tax structure or in a partnership, you will file the business tax return first, and then you file the personal. There's no, I'll file the personal and then go back and do the business. That's not how that works. What's on the business return will reflect what goes onto the personal tax return, okay? And so those are the two, so those are it. So if you're someone, you're like, you know what, all of this intimidates me because I don't have my finances organized. I don't even like to think about taxes. I don't like to think about my business. I'm just worried about making the money. Then definitely join the wait list for my bookkeeping class, where you can learn how to manage your own finances so you can have less stress when it comes to understanding what needs to be included on your tax return for either the tax professional or for yourself if you file your own tax returns, okay? I give you a full rundown of how to use a bookkeeping software so you can know how to use the bookkeeping software, as well as understand, basically become your own bookkeeper is what I really teach you to do, essentially how to become your own bookkeeper for yourself so that you can feel confident in knowing that you can pull profit and loss statements. You can interpret them. You can know how to pay yourself. You can know what to pay in estimated taxes, and you can have less stress. Okay, I'll teach you all of that from start to finish. So definitely join my waitlist for my upcoming classes coming up. And if you have questions after you've watched this live, then definitely leave a comment below. But that is all I have for this live. Definitely share it out for someone who needs to know this information. Drop the link for the wait list. I did have it pinned. It should be pinned in that little link right there. Let me see. How can I get that off of there? It's like in that little link button right there. Let me see. I don't know if you can see it, but it's pinned there. I can't. Anyways, I don't want to be clicking buttons on my phone. But yeah, it's right there. I'll drop it in the comments once I end. Okay, you see it. Okay, yeah. So I will catch y'all in the next live. Y'all have a good night.